Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Janine Poggi, editor of Ad Age. Thank you so much for joining us. According to the CDC, 26% of all adults in the US, some 61 million people, have some type of disability. Yet conversations around disability often get lost in the larger conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Joining me today to discuss how brands and agencies should prioritize disabled representation and accessibility is Keely Cat-Wells, founder of C Talent. Hi, Keely.
Hello, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Same here. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, for those of you watching at home, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels and we will try to bring them into this conversation. So, Keely, let's level set a little bit and sort of get a lay of the land in terms of what you see as the biggest issues currently around disabled representation in advertising and media.
Yes, okay, great question. A big one to jump into. I think, you know, the stat still remains that it's known that 0.9% of disabled people are currently in front of the camera in advertising, which is a pretty terrible stat when you read out those stats of how many disabled people there really are in America and how many disabled people there are in the world. And there's actually probably many more disabled people than that, but because of the stereotypes, the stigmas, the issues that exist, disclosure is sometimes impossible and scary, and people are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs, they're going to lose their relationships, because disability is still seen as this bad thing. So I think there's actually many more disabled people than those stats even kind of allude to. And there actually hasn't even been any studies to tell us how many disabled people there are behind the camera. So I think the lack of the measurement around disability is probably one of the areas that I see, and we really need those to be able to track our progress. And then I think, we see at C Talent this desire of brands and agencies wanting now to make the change and wanting to do better, which is great. But I think what we've seen is that there just haven't been the budgets to support the desire. And I think that stems from the systemic issues around disability being seen as charity. And although we need to recognize the business case of disability and how much spending power disabled people really do have, we have got to recognize and realize that we don't always need numbers to justify why it's important that disabled audiences and employees deserve to be invested in. So we need to take additional steps to find those budgets, to get that funding, to start developing a pipeline of disabled people, to increase hiring and incorporating disability into all initiatives, not just diversity-specific ones or disability-specific ones, and really consulting with disability experts, disabled disability experts in these spaces. And then I think one of the biggest issues too is not having enough disabled people at board level, at C-suite level, and we need to increase disabled people being in leadership positions as well.
What progress did you see from 2022? What movements have started to move in the right direction, and where do you see that going this year?
There's definitely been some great progress, and I think there are some really wonderful leaders in this industry too who have been making waves of change. I love seeing the work that Josh Loebner is doing, Christina Mullen, Jenny, the Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft, KR at Google, and then also companies like Levant Consulting, Purple Goat. Obviously, I am so proud of what we've been able to do and are doing with C Talent and the change that we've been able to contribute to. So there's a lot of great progress, but brands really need to be prioritizing, amplifying the voices and perspectives of disabled individuals, and that includes everyone from creators to employees to consultants, and ensuring that their products and campaigns are inclusive and accessible. And I think we really need to go beyond just accessibility as well. Accessibility is crucial, but access alone is not going to solve ableism. We need to think about the way that disabled people are being talked about in the narrative and how we're being included. I think we also need to see more marketing that is focused on products that are accidentally accessible, which means products like Alexa or products like I think Apple did such an incredible job recently with The Greatest. I don't know if you saw it. This
Yes, you did,
such
yeah.
fantastic ad that really highlighted the features of the accessibility features that Apple have. I think, that explicit decision to market to the disabled community, we need to see more of that. It's wonderful to see.
I want to break this all down a little bit. So, are we talking about both, storylines that are about the disabled community, but also are we just talking also about casting in storylines that are not about the disabled community? And can you talk a little bit about the nuances in both of those?
Yes, great question. It's so important that we have both narratives, right? As you say, the ones that specifically focus on disability, those that are marketed at and for the disabled community, that have a disabled person at the center of the narrative, and that really celebrate our community, that celebrates our history that has not yet been told because we've been so hidden and oppressed from in media and entertainment. So we've got that side of things, that very disability focused, centered narrative. And then on the flip side, we just want to have disabled people included. And in every ad, whether it is for any kind of product, right? Because disabled people are valued members of society, and we are mothers, fathers, best friends, and everything else. So we have to have those two perspectives. And I think something else that's important to mention as well is, I think oftentimes when disabled people are at the center of these narratives, oftentimes the disabled person is a Paralympian or a para-astronaut, or they're exceptional in some kind of way, right? But we have to go beyond that, because all disabled people are valuable. All disabled people deserve to be on screen, deserve to be represented. So I want to see all disabled people, and all disabled people use various products. So we have to go beyond just being willing to include exceptional disabled people, but including disabled people just because we're all valuable.
Can you talk about the difference between seen and unseen disability and how that should be factored into this conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I think historically we've really only seen one version of disability. And when someone thinks of the word disabled, they'll probably think of a wheelchair user. And of course, it is so important that we have wheelchair users on our screen, and even wheelchair users have been severely underrepresented. But there is also so many areas of disability that is yet to be represented and explored. And I remember when I came out of hospital, I didn't even realize that I was a disabled person until I lost a job within the entertainment industry. And then I started identifying as a disabled person because I realized what that really meant. What disabled really means, I'm disabled because of this inaccessible world that I live in and because of the barriers that exist. And I don't have to be a wheelchair user to be identifying as disabled. It comes in so many forms. So we do need to see a more varied version of disability, everything from chronic illness to mental illness to wheelchair users, to those who use mobility aids, to those who are ambulatory wheelchair users, and really seeing dynamic disabilities on our screen as well. And that also leads to intersectionality and getting more representation of Black disabled people, of people who are queer, who are also disabled, and increasing that intersectional view of disability.
Yeah, you mentioned measurement as one of the key problems here, and I think across the board when we talk about DE&I in general, measurement and being able to measure and count progress is often a challenge. What kinds of steps are being taken currently in the industry to do this? What do you think needs to happen to be able to measure this?
I definitely think progress is being made, and I think there are some great people who are working on this. I think, again, the thing that lacks from this action being taken is it being disabled led. We still don't see the right questions being asked. If we're even talking about the right answers being given, we need to ask the right questions. And the only people that really know those questions to ask are people with lived experience. So we have to consult with those right people. And I think that, that's such an important piece of this puzzle. So, and I think as well, it's important that we integrate counting and measuring disability within all measurement that is happening, whether it's disability specific or not, making sure that we're not othered. I think we see this all the time too when we're breaking down diversity. Often disability is just and other, and we need to change that. We need to explicitly be counted, measured, employed, and represented.
What are some of the right questions that need to be asked that aren't being asked right now?
Ooh, that's a big, broad question. I think I think it depends, and it's going to be different in a kind of every sphere of this industry. But I think the main one is who is in the room. What is their expertise? What is their lived experience? Because we've also got to recognize that not all disabled people are experts in disability and in access. We have to normalize that too, right? Normalize disabled people being experts in subjects beyond disability and not rely on that one disabled person in the room to be able to speak on behalf of the entire community. No one can speak on behalf of their entire community. It's impossible. So I think one of the biggest questions to ask is who is in that room? And also at what level are they in that room? And how much of a burden is on their shoulders?
We are just a few weeks out from the Super Bowl, and we talk a lot about representation in Super Bowl commercials. It's a really big stage and a chance for brands to make efforts towards progress around DE&I. What would you like to see out of the big game commercials?
I think it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier of the narratives around disability and disabled people not just being shown as exceptional. Of course, we want to highlight and be able to have disabled role models that we can all look up to and be amazed by and look at their incredible stories and journeys. But I'm really excited, hopefully this year, to see some stories just about disabled people who are nurses and who are doing great things and they're valued members of society, but they don't have to be exceptional. And I think too, I would love to see within the Super Bowl specifically stories around disabled people who are working behind the camera on this job too, because we often talk about what we can visibly see, but we don't usually talk about what's behind that camera. And I think those stories are equally as important as the ones that we hear about in front of the camera as well. And then obviously the accessibility of that campaign itself, making sure that there is fantastic audio description, that there is great captions, and all of them again should be driven by the disabled community who are experts in that field.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about accessibility specifically. Like, what have you seen in terms of movements towards more accessible marketing strategies and products, but marketing specifically? What progress has been made there?
I think there's been some really interesting progress that has happened. I think last year, looking at everything, and even the beginning of this year, I think everything from L'Oreal recently releasing their new product and the way that I love seeing the various disabled people that they chose to be a part of that campaign and kind of the main people featured in that. That was really wonderful to see the intersectionality and getting to know a bit about the stories of those people that they chose. I think we also have to really meet the community where they are. I think recognizing the power of creator marketing, especially for the disabled community, because disabled people really use social media as that connectivity. It's really, for me personally, that's where I first of all went for to find other people that looked like me, that I could identify with, that I could speak to. And I do think that it's not used enough to get the products in the hands of disabled people. So I would love to see more of an effort on creator marketing and meeting the disabled community where we are. But yeah, there's been some great progress. I mean, even seeing the steps that Pottery Barn tried to take when they released their furniture line, I think there was certainly areas they could have done much better, and I do wish that they consulted with a disabled-led consultancy firm. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I do want to praise them on the efforts that they took. And it was great to see that kind of investment that went into that product line and, the effort that they took. Certainly areas of improvement, as they say, but that was great to see.
And when we talk about accessibility and marketing, what are the specific areas that you're really looking at? Is it website design? Is it captioning? Like, what are you looking for to see some improvement from brands?
I think there is a lot of focus on compliance, right? Specifically around the digital space. People are worried about being sued, they're focused on compliance, and they're not looking at accessibility as this incredible opportunity that it is that can drive creativity. And I would love to see more brands, more agencies taking that opportunity with integrity and using it as a creative tool. So going beyond just making sure that you're compliant, we have to go beyond that now and going beyond the bare minimum. I think really, as I say, using it as that tool will lead to innovation. It's known to lead to innovation. So I want to see more creativity there, and to get to that point, as I keep going back to, work with disabled people who will be using the accessible features to drive that and really make sure that it's right and kind of it's used to the best of its ability.
I'm Janine Poggi, and I'm here with Keely Cat-Wells, founder of C Talent. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels, and we will try to bring them into the conversation. Keely, you mentioned social media, and I really want to talk about the communities that are there and how brands can get involved with those communities to better reach the disabled community.
Yes, there's so much opportunity on social media. Obviously, there are still so many areas that need so much work. Um, you know, Still the accessibility of the platforms themselves still need work. The algorithms and still there's a lot of work to be done. But these platforms have definitely led to disabled people being able to claim and control the narratives like we haven't been able to do before because of Hollywood, for instance, being so inaccessible of disabled people. Disabled people now with social media have finally been able to really claim that space and connect and be truthful about our lived experiences and also build audiences of not just disabled people, of so many varied audiences. And it's a great example of disabled people having so much power and influence on consumers and not just disabled consumers. So it's a great opportunity that I still think is relatively untapped.
Yeah, and C Talent was acquired by Whaler, which specializes in influencer marketing last year. What has this meant for the advancement of disabled representation in the creator economy?
It's definitely, I would say, one of a huge piece of progress that happened last year within our industry and very much for our community. When I was speaking earlier about brands and agencies really having that desire for change, but not kind of having the budgets or investment to support, I really applaud Whaler on the investment that they made to this community and to see talent and to our mission and seeing both the business opportunity and the missed opportunity and just the missed humanity and not including disabled people for so long. And Whaler, I think from the beginning, have been known to be a company that really prioritize diversity, inclusion, and see the benefits in it. And I think this acquisition marked both an amazing movement because they've already got the ins with so many brands and agencies, and they're trusted and they're one of the best in their space. So now having C Talent to be able to just be integrated into everything they're doing is such a huge opportunity to mainstream disability, to get those narratives that we really want to see out in the world and to increase disabled leaders within this industry and really go beyond what's already there and pushing the boundaries and breaking the barriers down for the next generation of disabled people. And I think the other great thing that we're able to do at C Talent is obviously we represent our incredible disabled creators. And then we've also got a consulting side of our company where we've been helping brands like Sesame Street, Netflix, Target, all of the kind of big companies be able to get disability right, give them that confidence, give them the training, give them the narratives, give it from the disabled perspective, and be able to work also directly with our creators to to get it right. So it was definitely a big and exciting moment, and we're really excited to see where we can go.
What should brands not do when going and looking to work with a disabled creator?
Great question. What should they not do? I mean, um, don't tell them what to say, how to feel. Really listen to them. You have to listen to the lived experience of the disabled person, and recognize that disabled people are not a monolith. We're all going to be different with different opinions. All of the language, for instance, that we use is going to be different. And I think language can sometimes be a big barrier. Don't be afraid to just talk about it. If you create a environment that is one in which you're willing to learn, that you're open to making mistakes and you have the right intentions, then no one's going to get mad. And also ask those questions before anything goes live, before any big announcements get made. Get it wrong in that small environment where people are going to politely correct you. Don't get it wrong in front of millions of people, because unfortunately, when brands get it wrong in front of millions of people, it halts their progress, because then they're afraid to do it again and to get it wrong. So I think when working with disabled creators, when working with disabled people, don't be afraid to say the wrong thing. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't put the narrative that you have decided is right on them. Let disabled people control it, or be a part and co-create it with you.
How do brands look to make sure they're being authentic and it's not just, a matter of checking a box and saying, okay, let's just find a creator to work with to like solidify this goal?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think we've had a lot of brands come to us too and say we haven't included disabled people before because we're afraid of tokenism. And I totally get that, but still include disabled people. It's not going to be tokenism if you're doing it because you genuinely want to include disabled people and you know that this product is going to be serving them, and that representation matters, and you just have to start. If it's because they're going to be the first, that's okay. Just get the first out there, and work with disability consultants to help create that narrative, to make sure that it isn't tokenistic, that you've got disability representation a part of everything that you're doing, and it's not just a one-time thing, performative thing. But it's also good to recognize that when you do cater to disabled audiences, when you do include disabled people, it's not just disabled audiences that are gonna applaud that and want to be your loyal customers. It's going to be their friends, their family, their colleagues, and everyone else that is associated with them. Because if we really think about it, disability does affect probably all of us. And if we are privileged to live to an older age, we will probably all in our lifetimes be disabled at some point. So it's good to recognize that disability as well is so diverse, so it can be a part of everything, and it doesn't have to be a one-off or tokenistic.
Keely, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad we had this conversation, and hopefully we could talk more later in the year.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Be well. Be sure to tune in to our upcoming episodes of Remotely. You can find out more at adage.com/remotely. As always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Lauren Ciardio, Arabella Breck, and Anna Sakula. Thank you for making this live stream happen. Thanks for everyone for tuning in.